Hello, everyone. This is just a little quick live stream to. I haven't posted to this channel in a while. Of course, I'm simulcasting on my Twitch channel in addition to the Quadcast YouTube channel. I do post to the Johnny Gators Twitch weekly, regularly, but I have not been posting things to the Quadcast channel in some time. I wanted that channel to be a more focused. Um, Project, but I have way too many projects, and that's really what I decided to do. I was gonna get started into digging into something today, and it was something that I had posted a few things about on my other channels, and I'm like, let's do a little update, and because I don't know how much people follow my activities or whatnot. But I've not done anything as Army of Quad in a while. Um, I don't know when the last Q8 conversion I did was, and it's not that I've run out of things to do. It's just that I am so unfocused and scatterbrained all over the place because I have so many hobbies and so little free time, and then I spend much of my free time just getting lazy and lounging about here, browsing on the internet, watching YouTube videos. I don't have the camera on me right now because the way I'm streaming doesn't let me switch camera angles easily. So you get my view of the world from my little uh, lazy boy recliner here. This is pretty much where this is where I do my work. This is where I do my hobby work. Um, when I'm doing conversions, usually I have the real deck over there in the corner somewhere connected to the inputs of the sound interface on the computer there. And what is the deal with the conversions? Well, the deal with the conversions is I've run out of the TAC reel deck is not a convenient machine for spooling 8 tracks onto open reels. And the Foztex, which although the head mounts completely wore out on that machine, it was still a good machine the way I had rigged it up for spooling tapes from the cartridges onto reels and vice versa. And at some point, a switch stopped working on there so that I can't get the motor running. And so I don't have a convenient and easy way to spool tapes. Now, I have received generous offers of equipment to help me alleviate that problem. Of course, that means dealing with the whole transporting and shipping and things, and then plus that puts something on my plate that makes me feel pressured to utilize it. So I've put a hold on Q8 conversions for now, but they're not over. I mean, heck, if I turn right over here, you can see my rack, and I got 2 turntables there. For a while, I was running 2 NAD C588 turntables, and I realized that was overkill, and I wasn't getting the magic bullet results that I wanted for CD4 from the C588. So I thought, well, maybe a vintage turntable would be better. So for a few $100, I picked up this Technics SL1700. Of course, it's not one of the Make 2 with the quartz motor, so it's got a servo motor. It's probably got some old capacitors in there. And so it's just a matter of pulling the trigger for a capacitor kit to recap that. But I have a pile of things to recap, so I just don't know. The speed isn't completely wonky on that. I mean, it sounds fine, but when I look at the strobe, it is very finicky to dial it in, and that's where it's like I should just recap it. Of course, that leaves me with a spare C588 over here on the floor. That's back in its original box, original packaging, very little use that I want to sell and try to recoup as much as I can off of that. A friend of mine has first dibs on that, and once he says no, I can't justify the cost, then I got to figure out a way to list that somewhere. But at least it's got the original packaging, so it's a case of weigh it, shipping label on it, get it to its right place, and I shouldn't run any eBay problems. Meanwhile, over here, we have the been here way too long but not forgotten pile of John Urban loaners that still haven't been done. Yes, more Barry Manilow. Uh, Actually, some of these have been done. Mellow Man, this has been done. The 2 Carly Simons were done, although I think the best of Carly Simon came out way too bright. But then again, my reference was a bit. And the Barry Manilow 2 I did. I have files recorded in for the Aretha. I don't know why I haven't done that. Anyways, so that's over there. And this is the room I try to keep tidy. So Anyways, I came up here to grab a screwdriver, which I have. So now we can, and some tapes. So let's so what super must be quad related project is Gator's working on today? Well, unfortunately, today's project is not quad related at all. But no, my project that's lately been focusing me is kitchen related. Because if I come down here in the kitchen, over there are what's left of the bagels I made, and I have a set of speakers up here, and these speakers I use, well, heck, on the weekends if I fry up some eggs or if I'm baking something, I want to get some tunes on. And for the longest time, those speakers would just run to zone B of the receiver here in the living room. And over here in the living room is where I have my Atmos set up. I'm not sure if I'm happy with those speakers in the wall. It was a good idea at the time, but then there was a stud right where the center speaker would need to go. So now I got this awkward center speaker out in the shelf with the convenient in the wall speakers, which putting speakers in the wall certainly is a compromise. Maybe I would have been better off buying 4 of these and then have, if you got to have one out, you may as well. But anyways, by the time I figured that out, I'd already cut holes in the wall and put them in. But I got my speakers up there and speakers up there, and so I am equipped for Dolby Atmos. But when you do Dolby Atmos, you're using all your channels in your receiver for Dolby Atmos. So that doesn't leave you with a pair of channels to send to Zone B speakers. So I could take a line out for Zone B, and that meant I needed an amplifier in the kitchen for my Zone B. And so for a while, I had one of those little cheap, those cheap little mini amps you can buy off Amazon for like, what, $20, $30, something like that. I don't know. You've all seen those, I'm sure. They're convenient. They're small. And then I thought, well, hey, what would be fun? I had this thing hanging around in my basement. So, hey, let's put a shelf in. Let's put a nice vintage old school stereo amplifier in here. And this here is a prominent. And of course, I love the 8-tracks. So, even though I've got this hooked up to Zone B of the receiver, I spend most of my time just throwing tapes in this thing. And quite thrilled when I find original 60s Motown tapes with their slip cases. They are fun. So, yeah. So I put that there. This here was not mine. This was my college friend's receiver. He picked it up at a some kind of a fortune. They were an auction house, but I think they sold stuff too that didn't necessarily go to auction. I never went in there, but he went in there and he found this because we were like scoping out the 8-tracks at the flea market on the weekends because there's a flea market nearby the college. And so he picked this up just to set it up in the dorm room and play around with some 8-tracks. Absolutely hated it, and basically. But at the end of our time in college, I think there was talk of leaving it on the train tracks and seeing what a train could do to it. We decided against that. He was going to throw it in the dumpster. I said, well, why don't you let me take that? And so I took it. This ended up at the shore house for a while. It was on the 2nd floor, so when Sandy came through and flooded out the 1st floor, this survived that. Then it ended up in the garage when that house got torn down, and I saw it on the shelf there. I'm like, hey, that thing still exists. So of course I took it and threw it in the basement, and I'm like, well, hey, I'll just put a shelf up, and there we go. 8-track in the kitchen. But I thought to myself, I'd much rather see a Fisher receiver here in the kitchen, much like the Fisher receiver I had as a kid that my grandparents gave me. It's a shame that I threw that thing out after a channel blew out on it. And so that took me onto eBay looking at Fisher receivers. And so that is what we're going to look at today. Yeah, I've got a few 8-tracks. I've also got some 78s. I've also got that monstrosity. All right, so now we come down into the basement, which is where I don't even try to keep things organized and neat and tidy. When it came time to take the air conditioning window unit out, I just keep it as close to the stairs as possible for convenience. And let's see, we got vintage computer monitors over here. Box of some more 8-tracks, computer parts, the shell of an old Zenith 1949 TV. The guts of it are over on the table there. I'm halfway through recapping it, and yeah, that's a project I lost track of a few years ago. I actually cleared out a bunch of garbage from this pile a few weeks ago. I need to get back to finishing that out. A few old receivers there I'm not sure what to do with. Various board games and things that have just moved with me and brought in, and more clutter that I've accumulated in boxes over the years that will just kind of film developing stuff, and a projector. More vintage computer parts. Boxes I had to move out of the way when the furnace started leaking. I replaced the pressure relief valve, and now it's not leaking, so that's good. But there were a few days there I was bailing water out from buckets out the back every time I need to turn on the hot water to take a shower. Anyways, so here's a old desk I set up as a workbench area that I've actually tidied up to actually have room to work with. And over here is a great flea market find, the Magnavox Quad amp with Quad 8-track, and scrapping a few Quad 8 tapes. I set up a pair of cheap speakers on the front here. These are, Dayton Audio. If you want a cheap pair of speakers that you could buy that are brand new, that are decent for the price, I think you get those on Amazon for a reasonable price. And then I got some old little home theater speakers that I hung up in the back here for some rears, just because I had them kicking around. Soldering iron and tools. And here is a Fisher receiver. And I bought 2 of these off eBay because I bought the first one and I found that the amplifier works fine, but the 8-track only gets sound out of one side. So that said to me, maybe we should recap the 8-track board. And so here is a bag of resistors that I need to recap just the 8-track board. Not any of the other stuff, just the 8-track board, because I could always do that later if I deem that necessary. But for now, I know the amplifier is fine. So, let's baby steps, which even this isn't much of a baby step for me. And then over there is an identical receiver that I bought later. After that one didn't work, I thought, well, let's try again and see if the second one works right. And I bought this one that was advertised as turns on, but the 8-track player needs a new belt. And no problem. I bought 2 belts for this one because whenever I buy an 8-track, I always buy 2 new belts for it because it's going to need a new belt, and I'm going to need one someday at some point down the road. So I bought this, and I found that it does turn on, but sound only comes out of one side no matter what you select. And when you use the 8-track, the sound that comes out of the 8-track is hummy. So this one's in even worse shape than that, although it's cosmetically better. So the one that's more functional is up on the workbench with the capacitors for the board that's got the problem on it. Hopefully the problem is a capacitor. One of my pet peeves is anytime you go to the internet asking for help with electronics, the answer is always, well, you probably got a bad capacitor somewhere. Well, any idiot can say that. I already know that. You've told me nothing useful when you said that. You might be right, but you didn't really help me any, because just blindly replacing capacitors and hoping for the best doesn't seem a very professional angle. But okay, we got 20-something capacitors on the 8-track board. I have a soldering iron. I can probably handle that. So that's what we're going to try to do. Of course, over here, we've got other projects abandoned or to do. This is an old RCA 45 player that I recapped much of, but it still gave me problems because I need to recap the CAN capacitors, which involves adding in a rail and putting those on there. And while I was doing that, I broke a resistor, and then I ordered more resistors. And by the time the resistors came in, I lost focus or track of that. So I need to get back to that at some point. Down here, we have a Seeburg 1000 unit that is in awful shape that I found in an antique radio swap meet that I paid very little for. That realistically, I don't even know where to begin trying to work on that, but I'd love to have a working one someday. So I bought it. So yeah, there are those. Of course, over here, we got the 1949 TV that I'm in the process of. I reached a point where I replaced one of the CAN electrolytic capacitors, or the modern can electrolytic capacitor. Um, and it's a pain in the ass to do because the modern ones require more space, a larger hole in the chassis, which is where I found this cheap, what's this called? Some kind of a hand, basically it cuts metal and wears your hand out in the process because it's the cheapest one you could get. So it's like, ugh, to get every little bit. So that was very painful, and I never came back to the other cans. A lot of people just use standard capacitors and empty out and stuff the cans. Of course, people say, well, those capacitors are not built for, what a TV does. You really should use a larger, more can-based capacitor. But then again, the people that are restoring these TVs are restoring them to be able to turn on for a few seconds and say, look, it works, not to use it on a daily basis. So I think that's why hobbyists typically don't go to the trouble of using the can capacitors. But someone sold me on the idea, and I bought them, and now I got to deal with working the chassis to widen the holes. And not to mention that the next two cans that I got to get to are in a place that I got to detach everything, put the cans in, reattach everything. So I got to take lots of pictures and not lose focus and track. So I've got to prep myself for that. Not to mention, I have no idea what I'm doing. So this has been sitting here for a few years untouched at this point. While I try to find more realistic projects to build up my soldering skills a bit better. And that brings us to this receiver here. So, I also have a tube tester over there because working on the TV, I want to test the tubes. But then again, I don't even know if the tube tester is really up to snuff. I mean, it looks like it's working, and it is testing tubes and finding them to be good or bad. But I didn't restore that thing, and it's old, so it's probably not the best method. Media server over here, which kind of works, but, well, it works. I'm just not always happy with the way Plex works as a server for media. I've not found a way to easily stream things with ease and with organization. But yeah, so I really need to DVDs, and more DVDs, because I like owning physical media, but it's not convenient. And so generally, if I buy a DVD of something I want, rip it, have it on the server, and then I have to store these DVDs somewhere. Taped together trash bags as an attempt to black out the bathroom window, to make it into a dark room at times for film developing, which failed because then light comes through the seams with the tape. So I probably need to get like a foil tape to tape these seams. And even then, you still got to tape the thing up around the window without any seams that light will come through. Making a dark room is a pain in the ass, even a temporary dark room. Of course, I do most of my film development just loading the tank in a film change bag. It's just that I've been dealing with a lot of Super 8 expired film. And when you're dealing with that, it's good to run a test strip at different variable times to kind of find the best time for expired film. And that really is where having a dark room, being able to dip a section and then lower it after 2 minutes and drop it in after another 2 minutes to have 3 test times would come in handy. But blacking out a room is just a royal pain. So as you can see, yeah, I am a scatterbrained mess, and it's hard for me to focus on anything for a decent period of time. So we'll see how far I get into recapping this today. I don't have a camera set to do that live, and that'd be pretty boring, actually. So I just want to post a little update into all the things that are distracting me. Well, hey, and here's a question for the quad community that watches this video. Any interest in having this tape converted? Guy and Ralna, country songs we love to sing. Basically, someone on a Facebook group was selling a bunch of cheap tapes, mostly stereo tapes. This one was in the pile, and it was like $1 or $2, and I was buying other tapes from him. I've not seen much reference to this tape. It's country. which is not exactly my interest. It's kind of hokey. Heck, here, let me throw it on a little bit. Well, this thing's crackling like crazy lately, so I really should work on this one.
I ain't afraid to say it.
Not exactly my cup of tea, and this 8-track deck is a crackly mess that really probably needs some work as well. That's the problem with this vintage equipment. When I was a kid, this vintage equipment still worked great. Now I'm an adult and I buy more of this vintage equipment. You can't buy anything that works. Even the stuff that works don't work. Oh, man. And I am just not good at fixing this stuff up, but I try. Anyways, I mean, sometimes the method is just bang it with a hammer till it sounds. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So anyways, I'm going to get to work on, I bought here 20-something capacitors. I've now labeled them all. I have a spreadsheet. I have schematics. I have images. I have the service manual for this thing. So hopefully I can recap that board and get something good out of it, but we'll see. And I'll update you all. So anyways, that's the latest from the Quadcast. So yeah, leave any comments. Like the video or don't like the video. I'm not one of those YouTube streamers that's profiting either way, so I really don't care. And I'll see you on the Quad forums, or I'll see you on the internet, or wherever. And, have a great day.